In today's episode, we celebrate 1 year of the Reach Right podcast. Along the way, we've picked up a bunch of gems, and we hope to share some of those with you if your church is interested in starting your own podcast. We hope this conversation helps your church reach more people and grow. This is the Reach Right podcast. Well, hey guys, welcome to the Reach Right podcast, episode number 52. I am your host, Thomas Costello, and with me, as always, is my co-host,
Ian Hyatt. Hey, Thomas, how's it going? Big day today.
Big day, 52, 1 year deep on the Reach Right podcast, and it's been a really fun time doing it. We started off, we had been talking about it for years, doing this, and then I think we, like a lot of people, figured we'd give it a shot here in the pandemic, and it's been fantastic to see just the impact we've been able to make and the feedback we get from people. And so we thought today, as kind of a celebration thing, I think it would be a good thing for churches to hear, we just talk about some of the lessons we've learned as we've done this podcast for 1 year. We have changed quite a bit, I think, from episode 1. If you want to go back and listen to episode 1, you'll see, or watch it, you'll see different backgrounds and different cameras and all kinds of stuff. And
audio, video issues.
And just, I think even what we've learned, and we'll talk more about this, what we've learned in our own presentation styles and those kinds of things, we've learned a lot. So it's been really good. But I think this is good for churches to share this because we just finished a conversation today where they talked about how they were doing a radio broadcast that they need to turn into a podcast. And I think that there are lots of churches that have this kind of content that would actually, it would be really an interesting podcast that people would listen to, and it could make an impact. So I think it'll be a fun conversation for us to have, because I hope that some of the things that we've learned doing a ministry specific podcast, now obviously churches would have a different purpose from the stuff we talk about, but I think that we've learned a lot of things and have an audience that is mostly Christians or almost exclusively Christians. I think we have an audience that would really probably gain something from some of the lessons we've learned on this. So that's our hope, is to share some of that with people today.
It's good. Why don't you kick us off?
I will do it. Number one, the first gem that we've picked up along the way is don't despise humble beginnings. The famous verse that we all like. I always like to quote this verse back when I was church planting. I always would remind people, don't despise humble beginnings. The church plant stayed humble for a long time. So it was humble beginnings and middles and ends. It was humble all the way along. But, I really think that that's one of those things about doing a podcast, is that it doesn't, unless you have some kind of a ridiculous following on other social media channels, you're not going to have hundreds or thousands of people listening to it the day that you start. It's not gonna. It's not your first episode. The only people that are going to listen or watch that are going to be your mom and your dad, and the people that you actually tell them, "Hey, go and watch this. It would mean something to me." So those people that will do it, and I don't know. We just like any other podcast had very humble beginnings, and there has been a trajectory as we've done it that it's continued to grow. So it's just a good reminder, I think, from scripture that we need to, remember that some things are going to start small, and podcasting is definitely one of those things that starts small, and as you continue to do it, it tends to grow. So what do you have to add to that?
Not much. I mean, I think it's funny when you said, you tell your mother to watch or listen or whatever. I remember your mother-in-law critiquing me and telling me that I needed to change my lighting and all of that. And so that was fun. And I think pastors can relate. There's a lot of church planting pastors that listen in, and it's kind of like anything else. It's different. It's not like everything else, but like anything else, so to speak. Yeah, you gotta not just have too high of an expectation when you start it. You got to know it's going to take time. Yeah.
And I'm thankful that we had a humble beginning, just because it's if we're making big mistakes. I know there were issues in some of the earlier episodes with technology that always happens, or lighting and that kind of stuff. And having only your mom see it is kind of nice to do those kind of things. I exaggerate. It wasn't only our moms that were watching this thing, but it's something that it was a small group. And if thousands of people were watching our mistakes, it's much more, I don't know. It's just, you don't want to deal with that. So it's having humble beginnings is good in a way. So hit the second one for us.
Consistency is king, and it's kind of
right.
funny on a day like today, in all transparency, where I haven't felt the best, and really easy to say, oh, I just don't want to do it again today, or we can take a day off, and I think a lot of people think about this just in other areas of ministry, but when it comes to a podcast, being consistent is a big deal, because you're constantly putting the content out there. And you can't. It's like taking a break from a blog, right? If you're trying to build a following on your blog, you can't just post it once a month or something like that. I mean, we've done this, and thankfully we've been able to do it for 52 weeks straight
Consecutive.
So we've consistently done it each week, and so it's been a good thing.
Yeah, I think at Christmas time we recorded a handful of episodes, kind of at Christmas and New Year's to kind of make that easier for us. But we released one on every single Thursday and Friday. Depending on video or audio, we released it every single week, and that it's something that it wasn't easy. There's days like today where you're not feeling well, and it would be easier to mail it in. And here's the temptation: is you start to think, well, come on, like in the beginning, there's like 50 people that listen to this. If it doesn't happen today, it's not the end of the world. And you're right. It's probably not the end of the world when you do that. But I'll tell you what this is kind of strange to say, but the algorithms notice. And so if you skip a week here or there, they start to notice, well, this isn't a weekly podcast. This is something that's different from that. And it'll start to cost you in those areas. So, and I'm not saying you have to do a weekly podcast. We decided to do that. If your church wants to start out doing a monthly podcast, so be it. If you are gutsy and want to do a daily podcast where you do some kind of a daily word of encouragement, more power to you. That'd be awesome. And there's a place for those kinds of things. But we have seen that even when we didn't feel like it, or even when it fell on a holiday, doing something consistently over and over again on that same day, it was healthy for us to build the rhythm. And I think it really helped us start to build some snowballing and momentum with this.
Indeed.
Yep. Third one, I'll hit that, is consider both audio and video formats. And this is kind of a no-brainer for us. We out of the gate, we decided that if we were going to go through the work of building an outline and spending the time to think through these things and record something, it didn't make sense just to do one format or the other. I don't know. For me personally, most of the podcasts I engage with, I do them audio. But there are, sometimes I'll just be sitting around and have some busy work, and I'll have a YouTube podcast on or something like that too. But it's one of those things that if you're doing all of the hard work, putting it onto two different formats isn't really that tough to do, because what we do right now, just kind of to give some show people how the cheese is made with this here, is we are doing something through Zoom. We're doing a call through Zoom. We're also recording it on OBS software, so that we have our own cameras, because it's not the quality of video we want in just the Zoom camera, the Zoom side of things there. So we record it on OBS, and then we strip out the audio work on our microphones and things there. So it really, if you're doing video, you've already done audio too. So you might as well do both formats, I find. So kind of like a sermon. It's what most churches now are doing video sermons. I remember there was a time years ago when you and I were helping churches with media and website stuff that it was very common to only have just audio messages on there. Video was a tough thing, but now it's affordable, and like you said, we're already doing video, so why not make it available with audio? Everyone has a smartphone or an iPhone they're watching video from every day, and they pop in their earbuds or whatever, and they could watch it. Like you said, sometimes I listen, sometimes I watch. May as well make it, available to however people want to. It's on-demand culture now, right? Yeah.
So
that's a good point, Ian. I think for sermons, that's a good lesson for churches. Is if you're doing all the hard work on video, you should put it into some kind of a syndicated. If you call it a podcast or not, that's neither here nor there. But you should syndicate it. You should put it out there. And I'll tell you just from our numbers that there is a large audio-only audience that I think would be pretty similar on sermons there. So if you're doing the video already, you should put it into audio-only format and put it on the appropriate channels. So
Yep,
Well said.
that's good stuff. Yeah, someone might want to actually listen to it on a bike ride after they've been watching it, every other week, but they're on, just making it convenient. So
that's
I'll tackle the next one is don't ignore SEO. So that's one of the things we've learned from this is that, we want to make this visible, and you have to, there's certain things for you to do with your podcast and the way that you title it and all of that will make it more visible because it's not like we say with web development, it's not if you build it, they will come.
That's right.
It's how visible you make it online. So this could be something easily missed. I think that if someone gets the podcast going, this could be one step they easily miss because they're like, okay, I got it going. I got all the equipment. I'm staying consistent now. And then you forget about this very important detail that and probably is behind the scenes in a lot of people's minds.
Yeah, I think that just in general in ministry, we don't give a lot of attention to this, but this has it, and this sounds so strange to even say, but in my time pastoring churches, and our audience knows I've led churches, and that was really a lot of our secret sauce. Like I had a great team around me and good people that were there, and I'm able to preach, and we had good worship and things, but we saw lots of visitors because we got good at SEO. Like we really got good at making sure that our content got found. Even though we were smaller or medium-sized churches, we were able to get our content found out there. And so the same thing goes for putting together a podcast. I think if I gave there's lots of things to SEO, right? We could do a whole podcast about podcast SEO strategies. But if there was one thing, I would say get your titles right. And if you don't use keywords that people are searching for in your titles, then your podcast will not be found when people are looking for that content. You're going to grow socially. People will share it. You'll kind of pick up momentum that way, but people will also find it by searching. So even this podcast, for instance, it's called What We Have Learned Hosting a Ministry Podcast, or hosting a ministry podcast. That's the keywords that we're targeting on this particular post here, and that was very intentional. When we initially had written out the outline, it was called something like, hey, celebrating 1 year of the Reach Right podcast. And then we thought to ourselves, hey, nobody's searching for celebrating 1 year of a that's not a search term. So we changed it to hosting a ministry podcast being the keywords. And we're going to start to target those kinds of things. So that's a little bit more about how the cheese is made and how we do that stuff here. And but take that stuff seriously. Be intentional about SEO.
Yeah. That's good.
Next one is preparation is key. Preparation is key. If you think you can just go out here and wing something like this, well, you're a better man than I, because we really, and I'm not saying that we spend hours and hours or weeks of research on every episode, but part of this is we talk about what we know about and doing our jobs at Reach Right, helping churches reach more people online with digital marketing. This is stuff that we eat, breathe, and sleep all the time. But on top of that, we still spend the time to build out outlines, think through content, find stats. We basically write the entire. We don't script every word that we're saying, obviously, but we have a really clear outline that we kind of jump off of, and I think that it adds to the quality of the content. I will say this is an area that we didn't do as much preparation when we started, and we've grown in our preparation on things, and I think the quality of our content has really gotten a lot better, but you guys are the judge of that. What do you have to add to that, Ian?
Well, it's like preparing for your message as a pastor, right? Preparing a sermon. The best preachers out there or who are considered to be some of the best, preachers and pastors out there and teachers, if you will, they prepare. They do. They prepare quite a bit. Sure, there's days you can wing it and, the Holy Spirit can just download a message in, to you or something like that. Very possible, happens. But I think we've seen over the years that it's a similar thing, similar concept. The more you prepare, the more you will be prepared and the better you'll deliver.
Yep. No, I think that's exactly right. I think, preparation is vital with that. That's well said about with sermons. I've never been that guy that could just get up there and I didn't think of my sermon on the way to church on Sunday mornings. That wasn't me. Those guys that can do that well are one in a million. So God bless you if that's you. Maybe you should be doing a podcast.
And you're brave if you're thinking about it on the way.
That's it.
So Good.
Yep.
And the next one I'll tackle here is always be yourself.
Yeah.
So when it's funny when we started this podcast, we started, listening to other podcasts, which is good.
Yep.
It's good. You want to glean from others and learn some of the things, but there was no way we were going to go out and be, there's Joe Rogan, right? We know that. There's all sorts of big names with it. You'll mention a few others, but be yourself. And I think that, that was one thing I think we did fairly well out of the gate, was that we knew that, hey, we're going to be ourselves on this, and, we're just going to, and that takes a lot of pressure off too. For me personally, I went into it just saying, hey, I'm going to be myself. I'm not going to try to do, something or be someone else.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, I think that for a lot of us that are our audience, they probably have experience preaching and they're already public speakers. But I know, and maybe this changed due to the pandemic, but I know for me, I had very little experience talking to a camera, right? So that was something that was unique to me. I actually felt really uncomfortable, I think, when we first started doing it, because I don't know, just talking to a camera is different from talking to an actual person. And to this day, what we do when we film this is we put a really small version of our screen right below the camera. So we're kind of like talking to each other, but it kind of feels like we're talking right to the camera there. So I'm looking you in the eyes when I do it, because it helps me be myself more when I do those kinds of things. But I think that when I go back and look at some of our earlier episodes, I see the way that I was I was a little bit less myself in some ways. And I think as we've become more comfortable, I think it's just improved the quality of this. So you're exactly right. There already is a Joe Rogan. There already is I know I listened to the Carey Nieuwhof podcast and Brady Shearer and some of these guys that are in the same vein as us. And so I think that those already exist. Don't try to do those things. Be who you are. And that's the kind of podcast that's needed out there.
Good stuff.
Cool. Next one is share it everywhere. Share your podcast everywhere. This means put it out on social media channels, get it out on all the podcast providers out there, put it out anywhere you can put a podcast, because again, this is back to that same principle. You do the hard work of writing, filming, editing. All that work is the same work, and just there's almost no work in actually uploading it to different channels. So the ones we've chosen to focus on is for audio formats. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, those big ones there. So we get everything onto there, and then we get it submitted to lots of other channels that are out there as well. But we created accounts and really work on those. And then for video, we focused on YouTube and Facebook and getting our content out in those two places. So the amount of time that it takes for us to get it out to all of those channels, there was some work in the beginning, setting up the accounts, getting everything all dialed in on Spotify and SoundCloud and everything. But now it takes the same amount of time to get out to all of those channels on audio format, and then it's just uploading a similar file to both YouTube and Facebook. There's a slight edit, a few little differences between the two, but uploading those two, I mean, it's the time that it takes to upload. So that's how long that's the difference in this here. So I think if you're going through the work of making it, you might as well put it everywhere.
Absolutely. If you're staying consistent, you're doing all the other things we're saying, why not get it out there? That's good stuff. So the next one I'll tackle here, it's invest a little, but not too much. Yep. So after all this stuff we've been sharing so far in this episode, someone might be thinking, well, that's, my gosh, equipment. What do I need to do? You shared a little bit earlier about, OBS software and, investing in a good camera. It really is not as much as probably what people think. And I think we're coming out of the pandemic where we've seen churches just invest thousands and, overall millions of dollars on production stuff, and that's all great. So that's kind of in people's minds. There was a lot of investing in production and video stuff, but this really doesn't take a whole lot, and we didn't have to invest just boatloads of money. Yeah.
No, I think we're under $1,000 probably. We had computers and those kinds of things, and so that stuff we live in that world there, and a lot of this stuff were things we already had. But I think that the things you need to think about is you probably want more than just what comes on your laptop. I think that's important. And that means probably a different camera, probably a different microphone. those are two things you probably want to look into. And you probably want some other source of lighting, or finding a room in your house that has really good natural lighting coming in on your face. I know you're just in your room right in front of a window. I have a Elgato key light that's up above my camera here. I know you're using a really high-end webcam. For me, I'm using a Canon M50 camera, so it's a digital camera, like a DSLR camera. And so that's what we're using here. For microphones, we're both using Blue Yeti microphones. They're not usually in the screen, but here they are. Anybody that's interested with that kind of stuff there. So make sure it's facing the right way. That's a lesson we learned early.
Another humble beginning.
Humble. Make sure you're talking into the right side of the microphone and things there. But again, so these microphones are about $100 a piece. Between cameras and lights, we're probably $700 or $800 into the whole thing when it's all said and done. It's mostly free software that we use for the recording. We have someone on our team here that already used Adobe Premiere and is doing the editing and those kinds of things in there. We use Adobe software Audition to do the audio. So not to get too into the details, but all that to say, you don't need to invest 20 grand. You also probably ought to invest more than $50 to pull something like this off. So find that happy medium for your church. But again, it really comes down to creating good content is really the king with this here. So
good stuff.
Let me wrap us up.
Home?
Yeah, I'll wrap us up with the last one is you'll get what you put into it. If you are willing to invest the time, this is kind of a summation of everything we're talking about. A little bit of resources, a chunk of time to do it consistently, to share it everywhere, to focus on all the stuff we talked about. If you're willing to do that, I believe that there are results out there to be had. And I know it seems like everybody and their brother is podcasting now. I think that there's lots and lots of podcasts that go for 2 weeks and then they don't ever happen again. Or they happen once every 9 weeks. But if you're willing to get out there and actually do something with this, I think there are results to be had for churches. I think that we have the most important and the best message in the history of humanity that we carry with us there. And podcasting is a format that I think is really great for delivering stories, delivering testimonies. That's really what stories are. They're testimonies talking about the goodness of what God's done. But really just having conversations. I don't know what the theme is. Maybe it's really practical for your church. Maybe you have a theology podcast that you want to talk about. Maybe you're going to talk about church and culture. There's so many different ideas. We talk about church and digital marketing. That's what we do here. But every church, I think there is an opportunity. Now, all that being said, it's another warning to count the cost because it's something that if you just think that it's easy to do, I'm just going to go out there and do a podcast, you will not get any results. It's just going to be throwing your time away to do something like that. We went into this going in that this was not going to be a try it for a month and see if it sticks kind of an approach. We went in knowing we're going to do this for the long haul because we know that this kind of stuff will snowball. And if we put in the effort, we believe that we'd start to build an audience, and that has happened, it seems like. So anything to add to that, Ian?
No, not much. I think that you summed it up really well. I think the counting the cost thing is, it's the same thing if you're starting a blog. It's the same thing if you're starting a new ministry within the church, right?
Absolutely.
You have to say, hey, if we're not going to do this right and consistently, then we shouldn't do it at all. Right. And we're saying do it. We're not saying don't do it at all, but be committed and see it through. So, that's good.
Yeah, we'll leave you with that. Do it. I think that if it's something you've had kind of an itch or a tickle to go for it, I really want to encourage you. It has been fun. Ian, I've enjoyed doing all of these with you, obviously, and all of our fans. And I don't know if we call them fans, but people that we have a few that are fans, I would say. I want to celebrate those guys. We have a few people that are out there and actual fans, but all the people that are in our audience and part of our Reach Right family. I want to take this chance just to thank you guys. We do that at the end of every episode, but really having done it for a year and everybody that's been with us from the beginning. So that means Mom, thank you and everything. But everybody that's been with us after that and has been coming, and all of our people that have watched this, it really does mean so much to us that you make us a part of your week, or as often as you do listen to this podcast or watch this podcast. So we're thankful, and we just see it as a blessing from God to be able to come into your life and be able to engage with people that way. So we hope it's been helpful to you guys. If it has been, as it continues to be helpful, it means a lot to us when you rate and review and subscribe and share and comment and let us know that you're out there. Give us the thumbs up and doing all those things. We just thank you guys so much for being part of our Reach Right family. And thanks for 1 year, and we'll hope to catch you next week.
Yeah.